Driving with a box stuck under his car. And like, who knows how long he was driving. I saw him pull out of the parking lot and turn right, and the box is still stuck under his car. So who knows how long he was driving with that box under his car. I bet he got home, he pulled into his driveway.
Out in the sky. I'm not. Wow. You're like a music. It's not.
I don't think it's real. I don't think it's
maybe
real.
there's a. I see the lineup for cars. Getting wasted. The Empire State Building is like really close to it, so it's a good.
And I did best with what was in my hands.
Last week, we kicked off our relationship series by talking about the reality that every single relationship we enter into is broken. And from the very first, our relationships have been marked by some common denominators that are not so healthy. By hiding, by shame, by blame. That there are things that are a part of every relationship that make it difficult. And if you missed last week, I'd encourage you, listen to it on the web or grab a DVD on the way out for free and catch up with that, because the foundation of all the relational talk that we're going to do for the next several weeks is in the reality that we are all broken. And because of that, our relationships are all broken. And they have a chance of being redeemed and revived and renewed because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. By taking the brokenness of who we are and bearing the penalty of that on Calvary's Hill. And so make sure you don't miss that. Because as we enter into these different topics, that'll be foundational to everything that we talk about. But this week we want to talk about communication. And it was interesting because whenever I started talking to Dana about communication and how relationships communicate and some of the things that I wanted to talk about, I would show her a verse and she would have a completely different take on that. Imagine that. I would say, this is really important. She said, yeah, but this is also important. And I would say, wow, I never thought of that. And so we decided that we would get up together and talk through just three basic things. There's so many things that we could talk about in relationships. We're just going to talk about three basic things. And it's in the context of, we believe that we're losing the art of communication. Technology helps us in so many different ways. So don't hear that I'm anti-smartphone. I have one. I use it. I'm thankful for it. I wish my wife would get one. So don't hear that. What I'm trying to tell you is that when you rely on texting and emails and forums to be your only way of communicating, there are some things that you're losing in that practice, some arts that face-to-face communication is the only way to learn. Things like the ability to read cues. So much of my conversation with my wife is different than just the words that are said. The facial expressions, the body language, the kinds of things that are kind of coming to me, the tones that are used. I mean, I don't have the advantage of, is she using all caps? You've got to pay attention and look what's going on. The anonymity that we have and some of the control that we have inside of the technology conversations is just not a reality in real working relationships. And then, of course, one of the biggest dangers is the loss of filters. I look at the way people talk to one another, and it's so angry. I mean, I get sometimes some things sent to me through email or text, and I say to myself, I know they wouldn't talk to me this way face to face. I just know you wouldn't. Do you really mean to be that mean? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, it just seems that the loss of filters, not only just in terms of anger, but also in expressions of how you feel. There's some tact. There's some things that shouldn't be said. And so we need to work on this art of communication. What we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about 3 areas today. They're very simple areas, very, very foundational, super hard to do. Super hard to do. We had a crazy week. We knew we were gonna do this together, and sure enough, there's been several times when she said to me, "You're not listening." And she was right. I mean, she was right. I didn't mean to say that you were just saying that.
No, I wouldn't just say that.
No. But here's what I want to do. I want to talk about these 3 areas, and then at the end of it, we're going to try to manage our time in such a way where we give you an opportunity to shout out a question or two, and we'll talk about it. Theater, here's what I want you to do. As we're talking about this, you just write down a question, hand it to John. I've got my cell phone up here, which I don't normally do, but I've got it up here. John's going to text me a question from y'all so you can get it over here to us. So just figure out if anything comes up while we're talking in these 3 areas, think of it, maybe give yourself a little note, and then in a minute we'll give you a chance. Fair enough? Okay, first area. Don't lie. Tell the truth. Here it is, Ephesians 4, verses 15, 16, and 25. Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. When will we be in a situation when that's not true of us? When will we not be thrown and blown about and be able to recognize what's wrong? Instead, this is what will mark us. We will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ. That's what we talk about around here all the time. 640 discipleship is becoming more and more like Christ. One of the characteristics of that is communication that speaks the truth in love. Who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly as each part does its own special work. And then skipping down to verse 25. So stop telling lies. He's writing to Christians who are still lying. Stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth. Listen, I grew up in a home where I was taught it was okay to lie. Now, you're thinking, now not intentionally, but here's what would happen. I remember as a kid all the time answering the phone. Hey, Mom, it's for you. She would respond, tell them I'm not here. I thought, okay, that's convenient. You don't want to talk to somebody, you say you're not there. I get this whole deal. So by the time I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, I was building up these big fabrications of my life. I can still remember on one of those 2 grades, I think it was the 4th grade, where I had built this thing about how I had motorcycles at home and go-karts, and I lived in this big house with a pool, and all of these kinds of things that I had shared. Finally, 3 of the kids, about probably halfway through the fall, 3 of these kids, these boys said, I want to come and see your motorcycles. Well, I'm stuck. I'm completely stuck. I bring them to my house, and I show them a bike that I say looks like a motorcycle. I explained to them that, oh, I don't live in a house with a pool. I live in an apartment complex that has a pool. See, I don't even admit then that I'm lying. Just simply telling the truth. What I've realized in my own life is almost all of the time that I don't tell the truth, it's an act of cowardice. It's just an unwillingness for me to face what is going on in front of me. If that's not important enough to you, let me show you a verse. Proverbs 6 says this: there are 6 things the Lord hates, no 7 that he detests. Now you think, wow, this is 7 things God's going to say he hates. He can't stand. Watch them. Now watch it well. Haughty eyes, lying tongue, hands that kill the innocent, heart that plots evil, feet that race to do wrong, false witness who pours out lies, and a person who sows discord in a family. 2 of those 7 have to do with lying. 2 of the 7. It's not enough, though, just to speak the truth. It's to speak the truth in love. In 1987, I had been a football coach for 8 years, and pretty much my idea of talking to people was drills on the practice field and halftime talks. So when I started teaching in Sunday school and working with students and doing these things and leading worship in a church, Chip Ingram, who had asked me to join his staff and back in 87, back in Texas, he said, "Who are you angry at?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm not mad." He said, "Well, it sure sounds mad." And I was still talking to people. Can you imagine somebody leading singing like it's halftime of a football game? Come on, sing! Why aren't you singing? It wasn't quite that bad, I don't think, but
Not quite, but
it came across that way. And Chip said, it's okay to speak the truth, but you need to wait till you can speak it in love. And I said, love? What's love got to do with it? And he said, you need to make sure that you want the best for the person that you're talking to. You don't speak the truth until you know and understand that you need to speak it in such a way it's best for them. Not just dispersing the information and feeling like I've done my deal. But the reality is there's more than just to this whole idea of just not lying. And Dana's going to tell you about it.
when I'm a rule follower, so lying was not a super big issue for me because I would have always been afraid of getting caught. You know, that I would never have brought the kids over to my house because I would have known what was going to happen then. So when I think about this, speaking the truth in love in healthy relationships and what that means, and that's not only just between husband and wife, that's all kinds of relationships that we have. The part that I think about in speaking the truth in love is don't hide. Remember Steve talked last week about one of the effects of sin in our relationships is that we hide because of our insecurities. First of all, we hide from God, which is silly, but just like Adam and Eve did, that relationship is severed, so we hide from him, but we hide from other people. We hide our true self from the people that want to get to know us the most. And so when I think about speaking the truth in love from my perspective, it's that part of the verse where it says, growing in every way more and more like Christ. If I'm going to grow more like Christ, that means I can't hide the true self within me because then I'm not really communicating with the other person. And this is my tendency. My tendency is to hold it all in. And so it's my responsibility. It's not Steve's responsibility to draw it out of me, although that's what I want him to do oftentimes. It's my responsibility to say, this is who I am. And one of the key points of that is being in a relationship that's safe. If you don't have healthy relationships, then it's not safe to reveal your true self. And so to begin getting in relationships where you can say, I'm going to open my heart up a little bit and let you see the real me because I want our communication to go deeper than just this surface stuff, where really, when I'm not revealing my true self, I'm actually lying also, because I'm imposing to be someone I'm not. And so that's the area that I really have to be consistent about. So loving the other person isn't just doing for them or giving to them. Loving the other person really means allowing them to see the real me. And that's a difficult thing to do sometimes, but it's a huge part of communication and having those healthy relationships.
So what we do is we compartmentalize in terms of where we lie. So you may say, well, I'm not lying with my spouse or with my family or with my closest relationships, I don't lie. But what about around the relationships you have at work? What about the people that you go to school with? What about, it may be seasonal for you. It may be that you really only lie usually around April 15th. But lying is not to characterize any of our relationships. Another thing, though, that's very basic about communication is just the kinds of words that we use. Ephesians 4:29 says this, "Do not let any unwholesome talk," and the word there literally is rotten words, a word that's used for fruit that has become so rotten that you can't sell it anymore. Do not let those kinds of rotten words come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful, useful, beneficial, good, pure, for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. The truth is that apart from God's grace and people saying words of affirmation in my life, I probably would not still be married, and I certainly wouldn't be here before you. There were people that came along and said things to me that kept me in school as a high school student, made me dream about going to college, do coaching, become a pastor, stay married, all of those kinds of things. Just people coming along and saying the words of affirmation. The power of words is hard for you to imagine. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death." Just imagine, and we're so careless with our words. We're so careless. Imagine that we could actually say something today. You could have said something in the greeting today that would have made someone's week. Mark Twain said, "I can live on 2 months on a good compliment." You could have done that. Instead of griping about how bad the Niners lost last week, you could have done that. I do this. I mean, I'm so guilty of just being careless with my words. Proverbs 12:25, "An anxious heart weighs a man down, but a kind word cheers him up." Now, as I thought about this, I thought, okay, what are the ways that you can kind of do this? Because actually, I pray on a regular basis, God, when I meet with folks, when they listen to me, I would like for them to be built up, not torn down when they're done with me. I would like for them to actually say, wow, that guy believes in what God can do through me. So I thought, the kind of things that I'm talking about are considerate words, words that are thoughtful, not reckless or just unthought about. They're considerate. You've given it some thought. They're candid and honest, free from prejudice. They're confidential when needed. Nothing can ruin communication more quickly than a violated trust. They're consistent. People know what they're going to get when they talk with you. And they're constructive. They're building up, not just blowing smoke, but they're actually building up into folks' lives. Listen, we talk about this all the time, but the people up and down your row, the people in this room, are hurting more than they will show and more than you will know. I think about the Yelp evaluation. You know, Yelp, you can go on Yelp and see what people think of your church. And one of them said, Westgate is a place for beautiful people. And then they said, and they all have nice hair. And I wondered, who preached that weekend? But it's this idea that you can come in here, and I understand what they mean. You look so together. You look so godly. You look so confident in your parenting skills. You look so in love with the person you're sitting next to. But all hell breaks loose when you walk out these doors. Listen, we're talking about communication, and we've had on the way here, it was like, Steve, don't share that. So we get it. We get this. We're not up here as experts. We're just up here as an example of how we can be different in our communication styles. So just let people know that they are worthy of love and belonging. You don't have to lie or say, just let them know that in God's eyes, they are worthy of love and belonging. And that can sometimes change a whole outlook towards how things will go. But there's more than just building others up with words of affirmation.
Yeah, the part of the verse that jumped out to me was according to their needs. And that, when you think about it, is so much of the time we want to encourage people, but we don't pay attention enough to know what they really need to hear. See, sometimes encouraging words really aren't that helpful because they're so general. They're so for everybody. But I need to have words that are spoken to me and who I am. And especially if I've risked and let you see some of the real me and not hidden from you, and then you just go pat me on the back and say, "Oh, way to go. You did good today. Way to go, girl." Then what I feel is you really haven't paid attention to me. You need to speak words that are encouraging, but speak words that are according to the person's needs. And so you really have to pay attention. And so that's the draw the real me out part. Is that for those words to be encouraging, you have to know a little bit about me. Now, we can't know everybody, but the people that we're in those significant relationships with, the ones that we want to go deeper with, we have to pay attention to that. We have to be able to really know them a bit. And so what I would say is if you're going to really encourage someone, be a little bit more specific than you may have a tendency to be. And so instead of saying, "Good job," pay attention to what they did and then say something about what you saw when they were doing this. When you were serving with the kids, I saw you really getting down on your knee and looking at them eye to eye. That's the kind of comment that will stick with someone for 2 months. Versus, "I just think you did good when you served with the kids." That's still a positive comment, but really pay attention so that you're speaking into the real person and you're drawing out who the real person is, and it continues to encourage them. So I would just say, be a little bit more specific. We're not looking for flattery. What we're looking for is words that really build life. And so pay attention.
Good job.
He still has a little bit of learning to do, but
It's not only saying the right kinds of words, but it's being wise enough to know when to say them. Colossians 4:6, let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt. Salt gives flavor, it preserves. So that, purpose of why you want your conversation this way, you may know how to answer everyone. In other words, you may say, "Well, I just don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how to deal with them. I never can seem to say the right thing." Strive to allow your conversations to be wise in that it is always full of grace. Proverbs 16:23 and 24, from a wise man comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. Proverbs 12:18, reckless words pierce like a sword. That it's one thing to think about them, but then the timing of them. And I will tell you, at least in our relationship, I'm not great at this. There have been so many times when I've tried to listen to what she said, and there's a subtle way for her to communicate to me that she doesn't want to come right out. She wants for me to kind of get in, figure it out too. I don't know. I can't really.
he can't figure it out, so we just,
It's the nail. It's the nail. If you've seen that video, never mind. But in the midst of that, I'll realize, usually too late, that I missed it. I finally clue in when she says, "Okay, yeah, let's do that." But then it's too late. I wasn't listening deeply enough. I wasn't paying enough attention. Almost all the time. It's not on her. It's on me. And so the ability to be able to say the right thing in the right way at the right time. And think of this, James 3:5. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless and evil, full of deadly poison. And why? Because the tongue reveals the condition of our own heart. We are broken. And the truth of the matter is I want to serve her. I want to be selfless in my conversation with her, but there's always this little selfish attitude that comes up. And if it's not really managed well, it will kill you. And you end up finding out really too late. And the reason that this happens in terms of saying the right thing, the reason I mess up most of the time is because of how Dana sees it.
Well, sometimes the right time is, I don't want to say sometimes, most times the right time is after you've listened first. So it's actually shutting up and listening instead of saying the right word.
There's the rub.
And the timing is that you've actually been really fully engaged first to listening to what the other person is saying. And so most of the time, the art of conversation that we've lost, the piece that we've lost more than anything else is the listening piece. There is so much noise around us, so many ways that we get things thrown at us, that to really, for the relationships that we care about most, we've just already been blasted with so much stuff out there that we don't take the time to actually be fully engaged in them and really listen. And people need to hear. They need to be heard. They need to be able to share their stories. Part of the 3 loves that we talk about all the time, loving God first, it all comes out of that. But our neighbors and one another, the big piece of being able to love them well is being able to listen to them well. And we just don't do that great these days. I don't know if we ever have, because as selfish people, most of the time what we're doing when someone else is sharing with us, there's something else going on in our brains. And it's really easy to keep it going. And a lot of times it's, when's the right time for me to jump in and say what I want to say? I mean, I'm looking for the wise word to say, right? And I want the right timing, but I'm always kind of trying to figure out when that is instead of really being fully engaged. And so there's some skills we need to practice. Listening skills we need to practice. I'm going to give you 2 just really simple things that you could do to begin to practice this, because we need to practice on it. One is do like Steve and I did. We went online and we said, talks on listening, and TED Talk has a couple of really short videos that you can watch that give you some good tips on how to listen better. Well, the one I'm going to give you this morning came out of that. So make it an effort to really be more intentional about listening and learn some skills. So here's a skill that you can use to practice listening. It's with the acronym RASA, R-A-S-A. So go ahead and jot it down on your paper, your iPhone, or whatever you have here. So the R stands for receive. First thing you want to do with listening is you want to receive what they're saying. You want to be fully present and engaged. You want to pay attention. Get that thing we've said over and over again about paying attention. So how can you receive? Eye contact is a huge piece of that. Even your body posture, some of those things that Steve said that we're losing the ability to read is some of the things that you need to do as you're listening. Lean forward so that the person knows that you're paying attention to them. And also, it's a reminder, you know how hard I just want to give him one of these, right? It's a reminder to yourself that you're supposed to be paying attention to them and not what's going on in your brain. The first A stands for appreciate. So as they're talking and you're kind of leaning in and giving them eye contact and you're paying attention to them, make some gentle body movements that will help them know that you're right along with them, like a nodding of the head, like a, yeah, okay, Yeah, I hear you. So just some little gentle, things that you can, noises that you can make. You can actually practice them right now. So you can give me one of these, knowing you're with me and everything.
yeah.
So you're appreciating what the person's saying, and then summarize. Kind of give them a sense back of what you've just heard them say. So you might say something like, "So did I hear you say that sometimes your husband makes you crazy?" I don't know. Just respond to them back what maybe you heard
Bad
from
example.
them. And then the second A is to ask some more questions. If you've gotten them to open up and they're sharing with you, then ask some questions to help them to know that you really are interested in what they're saying. So receive, appreciate, summarize, and ask questions. It's just something for you to practice as you begin to really listen to the people, that you want to be able to speak wisely into their lives, because we know how powerful words are, because we've had them spoken to us, both positively and negatively, and you want to be able to do that to other people in your lives also.
Okay, we've got some time to take a few questions, and here's what we're going to do as well. Is if we don't get to your questions, you can email me at steve@westgatechurch.org, and then we're going to try to video a couple of snippets dealing with some questions and put them on the Facebook page this week as well, so that you can kind of check out some of our interaction for that. Now, let me also say the next week's message is on fighting fair. So this is on about communication now. Next week, when we're trying to communicate and it gets a little heated, how do you handle that? And then the following week, when you completely blow it, how do you reconcile a relationship in a good way? So right? Let's do this. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next 3 weeks. So this today, really questions about communicating and the different styles. Okay, who wants to jump in? Yes. Okay, what about when you don't want to communicate? That's a bad sign. Okay, all right, you're afraid you're going to get too upset, and so you don't want to communicate. You want to say something about that?
Well, sure. I think there are times we don't want to communicate. It's not the right time. Honestly, I need to process a lot more than Steve does. Steve he verbalizes it, and sometimes I just need a little space. Or maybe I've had a really bad day, or I know that it's not the right time to be communicating about what. I think it's totally legal to say, you know what, we do need to talk about that, but not now. Now's not a good time. But at that point, say, when is a good time? Let's get it on the calendar. Let's set up a date. Let's make sure that we get together at this time. And so you know that it's going to come sometime. It's just not the right time. And if you find yourself, sometimes we don't want to communicate because we know it's really going to be hard. It's the conversation, that speaking the truth in love. There's some things that need to be said that may feel hurtful and so forth, and we avoid that. But it's if I'm going to become more like Jesus, and it's my responsibility to be at that process, I can't run away from that. I need to do that. It's important.
Right. That's and that's really difficult for me, because I want to process things right away, whereas Dana would love a delay. So and you might have one of each in the relationship. Whoever the person is that's going to force the issue, they've just got, as long as I know it's on the calendar, I just don't like stuff floating out there that I know is wrong. I know every disagreement that we have, I've got an element of wrong in it. And I'm not saying I'm always mostly wrong. I'm just always got a little bit in it. And I hate walking around knowing I'm wrong. That something's going to happen. I want to know what it is. Most of the time as a guy, I'm pretty clueless about what I did wrong. And so I want to resolve it. And so it's very difficult for me to say, no, let's talk. I want to say, let's talk now. But as long as she can say to me, I'll talk to you later about this, and I'll when are we going to do this? And she'll give me a time, then it's okay. For me to be able to wait. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? Yeah. Good question. Yes.
How do you deal with being in a leadership position where everybody thinks they know you really well? You don't know everybody else the same way they think they know you, because you're sharing so much. How do you relate
He said, how do I relate to the situation? I guess you're talking about me? Both of us. How do we relate to y'all in such a way when y'all know so much about us and I don't know very much about y'all? Well, listen, sometimes I know more about y'all than you think. More than I want to know. And that you probably say the same about me. Yeah, we know more about you. But I just assume that I want relationship with you, and I assume if you come up to talk to me, you want relationship with me. You'll share whatever it is. I don't really worry about it. I know that people know me better than I know them, and so it's easier for me to shut up a little bit more and let them talk, because I've usually talked a bunch. But I don't know. That's not a big. Yeah. It's probably a bigger deal for Dana, maybe, but.
Well, just because I have a smaller capacity for the number of people that I can engage with, that's just personality-wise. And so I think part of it is knowing that and you guys know that, we need to have those people that we can really go in depth with and that they can really ask us the hard questions. And every single person needs that. Those kinds of people in your life that you can say, you know what? I'm struggling with this or that. And so generally as a as a part of the body here, it's really, it's a blessing for us to know that you care about us and you know about us. But I'm only going to share super deeply with those people that I have that closer relationship with. And I feel okay about that. I think you guys give us the permission to do that. And it's a blessing to be able to do that.
Another question. Yes?
How do you handle somebody who keeps talking and talking and talking? How do you handle that?
Yeah.
I can have a person who always talks about themselves.
Yeah. How do you handle a situation where the person keeps talking and talking and talking? It's really not a conversation. It's just a listening thing. And Dana,
You keep passing them off to me.
well.
Huh? No.
Well, here's the deal. It's very difficult for you to do that with me because I'm competitive by nature and I talk by nature. And so you're going to breathe. At some point, you're going to breathe and bam. I'm going to jump in there. It's because I'm not a great listener. I'm a better talker than I'm a listener. But Dana has this happen to her more frequently.
You have all got relationships like that. And some of them, I think that it's not necessarily a relationship when one person does all the talking. But it's sometimes one of those speaking the truth in love kind of things. Sometimes we need to move into the person and say, hey, for us to go deeper, then this needs to be more of a balanced relationship. And then sometimes it's not a situation where it needs that. It's more that they just need someone to listen to them. But for your own life, I would say begin to evaluate your own relationships and your communication style and your communication skills, because we can only really do anything about ourselves. And so just do some couple of checks. So here's a couple of boundaries that I say. How much talking are you doing without real conversation? And if you can say, oh man, I went away from spending time with that person and I don't know anything about what's going on in their life, that might be a cue that you're doing too much of the talking. And you really, if you want to go deeper in that relationship, you need to step back and begin practicing some of those listening skills. Or then the opposite would be too, is how much listening are you doing without really engaging? Because we can have a lot of, I can tune out and zone out and pretend like I'm listening to you, but I'm really not engaging, or I'm not allowing myself to reveal anything about myself. I'm kind of just saying, oh, I'm loving that person by letting them do all the talking. No, it's got to be a two-way thing. So begin to look at, for you personally, what is that like? And then for those people that are just going to talk, I just hide sometimes. I run away. I find I go to the bathroom. I'm just kidding. But those kinds there are those people in our lives, and we all have to love on them in a way that's engaging for them.
I think that this is also an aspect of speaking the truth in love. We have a tendency to speak about 80% of the truth and leave the hard 20% out. And sometimes we need to tell some people that are more like me, that talk all the time, hey, I'm so excited to hear all the things that God is doing in your life. But there's some things that God is doing in my life too. And you're not ever I know you care about me, you say you do, but you never really engage me. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that because that's hard. It's hard to tell somebody that, all you do is talk about yourself. So you want to do it in a way that's wise, but you want to go ahead and say that the best relationships that I have in my life are the relationships that I go ahead and venture into. I call it flying into the turbulence. Every plane, every commercial flight I ever take, the pilot has to make a decision to fly into the turbulence so he can get above it. And there's a rough section. And in relationships, we got to choose to fly into the turbulence and make sure that we're going through that so that we can get up there and be really close. And it's usually that last 10% of the stuff that we won't really tell them that's keeping us from being really super close because of that. I keep checking to see if John's sent me an email, a text yet, but he hasn't. Only a friend of mine who's a Rams fan keeps sending me about text messages about the game. So I guess we've got time for one more in this room. Yeah. Let's go back there. Okay, you caught somebody lying, but what? Oh, okay. You caught somebody lying, but they don't want to admit that they were lying. So, best case scenario is that you can produce evidence. Okay? So, that might be another friend that saw what was going on. Matthew 18 says when you confront somebody about something, you can bring another one who knows also what's going on and bring a second person into that. It might be that you can trace an email or a text chain and say, this is where it happened. I mean, go ahead and if you've confronted, they won't admit it. But here's an important point, and we'll talk about this actually in 2 weeks from now, but this is super important. A relationship cannot reconcile unless the person who caused the damage admits it. Okay? So I know all that now. In families, what we do is we just say, well, that ain't ever going to happen. And that's why family relationships are so splintered. They have never moved forward. There may have been forgiveness offered, but there's never any reconciliation, because reconciliation does not happen until the one who's offended admits they offended.
One who offended. The one who offended.
Does that make sense? The one who lied says they lied. Okay? In this instance, unless the person who lied admits that he lied, the relationship cannot reconcile. You can forgive them. In fact, you have to. Jesus said to, whether they forgive you or not or admit it or not. But reconciliation is different. That's where the reconciliation is where something splinters, and to reconcile it back and bring it to health, somebody who ever harmed the person has to admit it. So some of y'all have family relationships, and every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every time you get together for whatever, it's always a mess. And it's a mess because people don't admit they're wrong, including us. Okay? So in that instance, you've got an instance, if you value that friendship, do everything you can to help him see what he's done. Everything you can. But until he does, just be patient, because the relationship will not get back to health. You will be doing some pseudo relationship where the real you ain't showing. It's a law of relationships that Clifford made up. I know that's probably what you were thinking, wasn't it?
I was thinking you need to shut up.
Okay.
It's time to finish.
Okay, I didn't get anything from John, so send the questions into my email, and we'll try to do something with it on Facebook. We have kind of intentionally, the worship sets that we're singing and the song that we're about to sing, it has intentionally been about the love of God, because the truth is, we could talk for hours about how other people have violated the relationships that we have with them, but we're culpable in this. And the most important relationship, God knows us completely and still loves us unconditionally, and has extended to us the grace that allows us to extend grace to others. And he never wastes. He's not going to waste anything that's going on. He wants your relationships to be good and solid and healthy and moving forward and beneficial for you and them. But it's done in the power of Christ. So the worship team's going to come. We're going to close with a song that reminds us that God, nothing's too difficult for God. I know you got an uncle, you got an aunt, you got somebody in your life, a boss, an employee, somebody in your life that's like so difficult you think this relationship's helpless. Not in God's eyes. He can handle it. He can handle it. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the truth of your great love extended to us in Jesus Christ and the difference it makes in the relationships that we have. God, we ask that we would live life in such a way that we are confident and hopeful in the love that you have for us, and it shapes how we love others. And that brings you pleasure and glory. Help us. Help us to be great friends, good communicators, good lovers, because we have been so well loved. In Christ's name, amen.